big things, declarations. So certainly that could be by either the host government saying you have to leave, or by your home government saying that there is a declaration of a significant event, pandemic, epidemic, and we want our citizens to leave. Establishing what the requirements are. Recently, we've been tracking for our clients to try to figure out, because your employees could be many different varied nationalities. So if the EU is only accepting EU citizens and you're evacuating them, you don't want to evacuate them to a country they obviously cannot get into. Certainly the health status, identifying that core group that might have health issues that you need to give a little more attention to. You know, as we see in this pandemic, everyone has pretty much learned what are the, you know, subset of groups in terms of, do they have asthma? Do they have an immune deficiency? What is something that they might have in their personal history? And how do you ask that if it's not in their medical files? Someone has to identify these critical elements, and it might have to be potentially on a person-by-person basis or via email, because you just can't share that information with everybody. And then certainly health plan during the transit. What happens if they fall ill during that transit? You know, we've seen in the Hong Kong case of the evacuations during the Hong Kong riots, the route of travel, it pretty much was varying hour by hour sometimes. You know, what routes are open? How do you get people from point A to point B? Those considerations have to be tracked and monitored. And potentially you could have an ad hoc group from the CMT that is just dealing with those situations, and certainly using whatever outside resources you can have to support you in identifying the best route of travel. And do they need, say in Africa, we really haven't seen what's played out yet in Africa, but if we see potential social unrest, riots, you know, checkpoints, illegal checkpoints, we don't know exactly what's going to happen. But as this fluid process unfolds, those are all things that we're going to have to sit down and look at and identify what's the best way, and do we have all the information to shrink the problem so it's manageable, and we're making good decisions. Okay. I think the other things that are worth noting here, certainly if someone is ill, okay, how do you notify the other people? So even when they are transported out of the country, evacuated, and then you find out, well, they were with a group of our employees and now one of them has fallen ill with COVID, you know, how are we going to notify the people? What's our duty of care? And having that CMT discussion as to how that's going to play out. Okay. Another quick kind of framework and schematic here. As you're assessing, you know, how can you successfully plan this? It is very fluid right now. We've helped our clients in terms of initially when this happened, when everyone was rushing to the airports to try to get out, you know, what is going to happen in the future? So when the airports open back up, is it going to be a situation where, again, everyone is trying to get out at the same time? Is it better to stand back and to assess, are we going to stagger the people? Who's going to leave first? Is it safe for them to leave? You know, or is it better to wait in terms of them potentially just hibernating in place until we see how this is all going to play out? Again, it all comes down to making the best decision because you're not sure exactly what's going to happen. Another non-pandemic example is during the attacks last Easter in Sri Lanka, when everyone was trying to leave the airports. There was a discussion of, well, now the airports potentially are targets, and have they gotten everyone in the terrorist group arrested, or is there a second cell that now is going to attack the airport? So there was a discussion, if you're in a village or you're in an area that's safe, away from the attacks, you know, is it necessary to just run to the airport when it opens because there could potentially be another attack? So just taking all of these decisions into consideration and making those right. So here's the questions that you should be asking and gathering right now before things start to slowly lift or stagger where people can travel again. Certainly how many people, you know, who is moving first, potentially dependents, getting dependents out of the country, the when and the why, how are they moving? As I said, is there a route management problem with potentially the social and government organizations breaking down in some areas, which we might see in Africa and other places. Does everyone know the plan in terms of who has responsibility for what? How are you communicating that plan? And does everyone have the right equipment? I mean, potentially the people in country might have access to vehicles to get to airports or travel to a different region of the country, identifying, you know, who can assist in their own remote movement in the country. And as I said, what is the situation on the ground? In Hong Kong, as I said, that changed almost by the hour as the protests moved. And it's not as simple as in some countries. In Haiti, it was very simple at times because the government during the earthquake would come in. They could simply land a number of helicopters at a major open area. They used golf courses in Haiti, and the U.S. government was moving their citizens out to ships in an evacuation after the earthquakes. Okay. But certainly this is the first time when our clients had called us in the early days, it was really one of the first times where the governments, they can assist you, but it was such a huge draw on demand on the resources. What we realized was that the embassies were not returning calls, they weren't answering the phone, they were simply directing their citizens to an email to register so they knew who was in the country. But as it kind of moved on, certainly governments have stepped in and been able to evacuate their people, staggering them more recently in larger numbers. One of the things we learned was having resources on the ground in certain countries. That one of the example learning points was that there were flights actually going out with open seats. So a lot of people were booking flights and then changing their mind or having trouble getting to the airport. So we were advising our clients that as we heard this, if you can get to the airport and purchase a ticket, it's better to be there at the airport because we had real-time intelligence that flights were leaving with open seats. Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for attending this afternoon's call. If you need more information, feel free to reach out to us at info@assistamerica.com. Thanks again for attending.